bound to say it looks comparatively respectable. For all that, I've never been able to understand the fascination which makes my brother, Philip, and others wish to spend their lives in Whitehall.
Oh, I can. After all, it's the centre of government.
Yes, I suppose so. But then I've never had the least desire to be at the centre of things. I once said as much to my sister Hannah. She replied that it was sour grapes.
The Parliamentary Secretary will see you now.
Oh, Philip.
Mr. March, Mr. Elliot, Minister.
I expect you're dying of drought, as usual, at Haslingfield. The country's underwater everywhere else.
Well, the rainfall having been reasonable for once, I'm pleased to report that I have sufficient water for my requirements at my country house. I suppose you've got your hands full trying to prevent the monarch from making a complete ass of himself.
Happily, the Simpson woman's outside the scope of this department.
The talk at the club is that her hold on him is, sexual.
Yes. I'd heard that.
I doubt it. To me, it's much more a case of delayed adolescence, a phenomenon into which my son has given me some painful insights. I know. You and I agree to differ about that.
I suppose we must get down to business. I'm obliged to you for giving me your time, Elliot. I should be glad to regard it as a professional service.
In view of your family's kindness to me over many years, I'd much rather you didn't.
I appreciate your feelings. And as I say, I'm obliged to you. Have you any recent knowledge of the activities of your old chief, Herbert Getliff?
Well, not really. I have dinner with him occasionally, but since I left the bar, we've rather lost touch.
You recall that at the time that his brother Francis married my daughter Catherine, there were rumours of a scandal which provoked our family to irrational prejudice and strife.
That's right. H.G. was supposed to have abused a professional confidence, wasn't it?
No, there's no supposed about it. He and his relations made a killing on the stock market as a result of advanced knowledge of a government contract, which as a lawyer he'd been engaged to vet.
As if I wasn't in enough trouble with my daughter marrying a Gentile.
Yes, I remember. It sounded like a typical bit of sharp practice on H.G.'s part, but it never came to anything, did it? Besides, it was what, 5 years ago?
Are you familiar with The Note?
I've seen it.
It's one of the more scurrilous left-wing news sheets.
You surely don't waste your time on the outpourings of those obnoxious propagandists.
I do, when my political future's at stake. They're making out there's been a similar leakage this year, with Getliff involved again, and 2 members of the government. One of them's Hortin. He's only parliamentary secretary at present, but he's a high flyer, a future Conservative Chancellor at the very least. The other, I regret to say, is myself.
I refuse to hear such nonsense.
I appreciate your loyalty, Leonard. I should like to assure you that I am completely innocent. I'm confident. Hortin, too, is beyond reproach.
It's intolerable that you should be persecuted by mischievous nonsense dreamed up by agitators for their own purposes.
Quite. The fact remains that it could turn into another Marconi case if Getliff's been up to his old tricks.
I'll get on to it in the morning.
I appreciate your courtesy. Well, how's your wife?
Well, I came directly here from Cambridge. I've not been home yet.
Oh, I mustn't detain you further in that case.
Hello, you're home, are you? You'd better help me with this. I don't see it. I must get it out.
Oh, you better start again. Systematically?
Right. Oh, you remember RSR?
Publisher? Mm-hmm. He's still around?
I bumped into him today.
How was he?
On good form. We had a drink.
Right. What was your opening? Well, there's only one sensible counter to that.
He's looking for finance.
R.S. Robinson never let the grass grow under his feet.
You've heard things against him?
Well, he's run through a good many well-wishers. Must be something the matter.
Well, of course. He wouldn't have any use for me if there weren't. You don't need anyone if you're all right. Haven't you grasped that yet?
Just don't want you to be disappointed.
He's a gifted man, though, isn't he?
Well, he was a very good editor. That's going some way back. It's a long time since there's anything but a sort of hanger-on to the literary fringe.
I might be able to get him going again. Can we afford it?
Depends what's at stake.
Well,
Herbert Getlin's out of town. I've arranged to see him as soon as he gets back.
In view of the gravity of the situation, I've asked my son to join us.
Lewis, it's a good day for me. My partner and I tried to take alternate Wednesdays off.
How's the practice? Hard work?
And 90% of it tedious.
You've nobody to blame but yourself. Giving up a promising career at the bar to become a tuppenny-halfpenny quack in Pimlico.
Yes, well, it's more useful than travelling the Jewish legal circuit.
Pernicious nonsense, and I know where it originates. If that young woman that you were fool enough to marry hadn't had her head stuffed full of Marxist rubbish...
Yes, well, let's not put poor old Lewis through all that again.
I take that to mean that she still contributes to this noxious sheet.
No, as a matter of fact.
You don't mean to say that she's seen the light of reason?
Not in your terms. At the moment, she's more involved in direct political action.
I'm appalled to hear it. What does she know of these attacks?
Little as I do, I should think.
I'll have you know that my brother takes them with the utmost seriousness.
Well, he would, wouldn't he? Don't you agree that Uncle Philip's absurdly sensitive, like everybody in public life? I can quite imagine him sticking his press cuttings into an album every morning before he gets up. Can't you imagine that? If you're that self-absorbed, then it's intolerable to be attacked, even on grounds as improbable as this. That's about the size of Uncle Philip's discomfort. Don't you admit it?
You're deeply disrespectful of your elders and wickedly accurate. I still say you're making a frightful ass of yourself, Charles, but I'm always glad to see you in my house. I look forward to hearing from you in early course.
Never understood your relationship with your father.
Makes two of us. Actually, it's very Jewish, I think. He is glad to see me on his own terms.
Which don't include Anne.
Which don't include Anne. Which do include giving me an allowance, and which balk at making me financially independent, because that would seem to imply that he approved of my two major follies.
Becoming a doctor and marrying a radical.
Not necessarily in that order.
Do you really find doctoring that tedious?
Most of the time, it's dealing with colds, nerves, and constipation.
There are compensations.
Oh, yes. People have confidence in you. It's good to be able to justify that. Once or twice in the past few weeks, I felt I've been of some use.
If you had your time again, would you make the same choice?
Without a doubt. And you?
For me, there never was a choice.
Thank you, Mrs. Elliot. 1,000 thanks.
Sheila should have told you not to bother to dress.
I did.
Take my tip, sir. Always do it. Always put people at a disadvantage. Take no notice when they tell you not to dress. It gives you the moral initiative.
I warn you, sir. I'm a dangerous man to let into your house.
They're a part of our youth.
The Leopardi poems.
Lonely Beneath the Moon, my last independent publication.
We read them just before we met.
We're at the age for romantic pessimism.
They were magical.
I've been telling Mrs. Elliot she could write a book. Do you think she could?
I'm sure she could, whether she wants to.
And you, sir, I've just noticed you have artist's hands. Unlike the Philistines I spent this afternoon with. I was summoned to the city by an insurance company. They gave me tea and talked of the millions that they had invested. The talk was all of millions here and millions there, when all I wanted was £900.
You weren't being very realistic either, were you?
In what way?
£900? Where would that get you?
Great oaks and little acorns grow.
Not after years in the wilderness. Go off at half-cock this time, and you'll have dissipated your credit and be finished for good. Isn't that right?
I'd have thought so.
How much do you really need?
Well, if I could collect it, I'd say 6,000 would let me publish modestly, but professionally for a couple of years.
That's more like it.
Failing that, I could do a lot with 900.
What?
I could make a living by getting some sort of readership for the handful of authors I believe to be worthwhile. I did it before, I could do it again, with a bit of help.
He won't be grateful, will he?
Not particularly.
Don't soften it. No one's grateful for being looked after. He'd be less grateful than most. Oh, well. I suppose it's more important to me than it is to him. Night.
All right.
Well, I've heard of biting the hand that feeds you. But this chap, Robinson, has really raised ingratitude to the level of an art. How best can we protect your wife from these rumours that he's been putting about? I mean, you haven't heard them?
No?
Oh, my dear fellow, I'm most dreadfully sorry, but they're all over town. And actually, I assume that was why you'd asked for this appointment.
What's he been saying?
Well, that she's as good as left you.
Oh, really? For whom?
Not to put too fine a point on it, because she prefers women. It's no laughing matter.
No, I suppose not, but it's so wildly off the mark. As a matter of fact, it came about something else altogether. Remember some years ago you had some trouble over your share dealings round about the time your brother Francis got engaged to Catherine March?
Yes, vaguely. Some sort of howdy-do with Hawkhurst and Hazelden, was it?
Howard and Hazelhurst.
Yes, why are you bringing that old stuff up?
Well, there's a rumour going round that you've used inside knowledge to make another killing on the stock exchange this year.
There aren't many people I take that insinuation from, no less. But you and I know each other, so I'll answer you. They haven't a shred of justification. I have never had a cleaner slate. And if I can prove that they are throwing muck, they will find it is a more expensive game than snooker.
Well, the question then is, why are they playing it?
You might do worse than ask Charles March's Red Revolutionary wife.
The party line is to rally the anti-fascists and bring down this government before they sell the pass altogether.
What's the note's job?
To damage personal credit.
With a bit of scandal going the rounds of a few thousand people.
It all helps. If we don't get this crowd out, there'll be no stopping Hitler. That'll mean the end of us all. Jews first. Mr. March and his friends might remember that.
All right, but shouldn't you be raising your sights? I mean, Horton's just another parliamentary secretary like Sir Philip.
Unlike Sir Philip, he's a young man on the up and up.
Well, can you prove that he's made money out of knowing where an armaments contract was to be placed?
No. We thought we could, but we can't. But it turned out he had business dealings with Herbert Getliff. The name rang a bell, so I went back through the files.
Now, you must have known that if you dug up that old scandal, you damaged Catherine through her husband. It was a risk, at any rate.
Yes, I just didn't think it was a very real one.
But you were wrong. Can it be stopped?
I could go to Humphrey Seymour, the editor of the Note.
You'll be irresponsible if you don't.
We have different ideas of responsibility.
Don't you care about your husband's uncle being smeared like this?
Why should I? He's a reactionary. If he's also a crook, he deserves what's coming to him.
Have you thought what it would mean to Charles?
Go and make your own wife love you as much as I love Charles. If she's capable of recognizing you. I'm sorry. That was an unforgivable thing to say.
You wouldn't have said it unless you were afraid of what you might do to Charles.
How was surgery?
Long. Are you all right?
Yes, fine.
Hello. You do look pale.
I've been telling Anne she ought to go to Seymour. Why is that funny?
He was at school with me. I was his house prefect.
I'm quite sure Anne ought to go round there.
It'd mean making a private plea, wouldn't it? And you wouldn't want to do that unless it was really dangerous.
Of course I shouldn't want to. I'll do it tomorrow if you think I ought to.
My love, it's your decision.
Feels like thunder.
We ought to talk a bit.
What about?
Robinson.
Can't tell me anything I don't already know.
Do you know what he's actually been saying?
What does it matter? Why should he be grateful? Why should anyone be grateful because someone interferes with their life?
Interferes?
I wasn't doing it for his sake.
Well, whatever your motives, you helped him.
You've given years of your life trying to help me. Much good it's done either of us. You had ambitions, didn't you? You would have liked to have had children, wouldn't you? You'd hoped for a wife who'd warm to you in bed. You've given all that up for me. And do you think that I'm grateful?
Well, here we are in the heart of publishing land, 15A Maiden Lane. That'll impress the agent. Do sit down. At least it should. We'll know for sure when the manuscripts start to come in.
You haven't answered my question.
My dear Mrs. Elliot, do you think I would take advantage of you?
In a word, yes.
A cigarette? You must remember that in my time I was a figure to be reckoned with. I discovered talent, made reputations, yes, and destroyed them too. Life is the raw material of literature. I may have used people, Mrs. Elliot. I've never been afraid of them. I suspect that's more than you can say. Mr. Elliot, I imagine, is setting the world to rights. You, Mrs. Elliot, need an interest of your own.
That's what you promised to provide.
Beyond this, why, you're not even amused by the games I choose to play.
They don't get you anywhere.
Oh, you're wrong. 3 or 4 good books is one thing. 3 or 4 good books and a bit of mystification is something else again. Put the cat among the pigeons and conventional people can't cope. Look at you. Face you with something unorthodox, you don't know where to start. Always do what conventional people wouldn't. It's the only way.
Others manage without it.
Well, they haven't got along on negative resources for 40 years, have they? Do you think you could have done that?
Well, in about another 9 years, we'll know, won't we?
I've told you what you should do, Mrs. Elliot. Write.
I don't have the talent.
You have the talent. The question is whether you've got the guts to be open to the world. Drop your defenses. Put yourself at risk to tell the truth as you see it, however terrible and dark.
Risk?
Well, that's at the heart of any worthwhile artistic endeavour, Mrs. Elliot, but then it's at the heart of life itself, isn't it? Get it down, Mrs. Elliot. Get it all down. Share, reveal. That's the way artists exorcise their ghosts.
I'm sorry, Mr. L.
I'm busy, my dear.
I think you'd better see this.
Personages close to government, interested in armaments program in more ways than one.
It must be Anne. Well, don't you agree that it must be Anne?
But Charles must have known her intentions.
Oh, he couldn't. He couldn't have been as he was last night if he'd known this was on the way. But it's not in his nature.
All I can do now is judge him by his actions.
Seymour. Charles. Come in. What can I get you?
Nothing, thanks.
Look, Humphrey, I've got to bring up this Philip March business.
Right. Sit down.
We're all agreed he's in the clear this time round. In fact, if I hadn't revived that old business with Herbert Getliff, nobody'd even be thinking of trying to smear Sir Philip.
He never seriously counted. With all due respect to your family, Charles.
Also, it's a pretty old hat.
Quite correct.
We'd never get it cut and dried. Well, I'd say there were strong arguments for leaving him alone in any case. I shouldn't ask you to call off anything important. In this case, I think I can.
There's no such thing as private news.
You admit you've got nothing against my uncle at the moment. You admit the same about Herbert Getliff. Is there any foundation for this present scandal?
I don't know.
What do you mean?
Precisely what I say.
In fact, you're proposing to rake up a 7-year-old scandal to give a bit of credibility to a sheer lie.
I'll have time for your moral sensitivities when we've beaten the fascists and got a decent world.
Well, meanwhile, you have to live with the law of libel.
Think again, Charles. No smoke without fires, the maxim I rely upon to keep this paper out of the courts. Now, I'll tell you what could finish us. It's not what we publish. It's the way we collect our stuff. Anne knows enough about that to get us shut down under the Official Secrets Act in about 10 minutes flat. Question is whether she'll do it. It's a case of weighing your conscience against your moral sentiments, really, isn't it?
If they go ahead with these accusations, I should win a libel action, should I not?
I should say without a doubt.
Yes, I should also do myself more harm than good. There happens to be some substance in what they say about 1931. So I should like to distinguish my actions quite sharply from those of Herbert Getliff. He's a twister. He's downright dishonest. So I'm sorry you permitted Catherine to marry into the fellow's family.
I refuse to accept that. It's preposterous. If other marriages in my family had been as sound as my daughter's, we shouldn't be in this
Leonard,
mess.
But you can appreciate that Getliff isn't my favourite character at the moment.
Shall we keep to your own activities, Sir Philip?
You may remember that in 1931 I only spent a few months in the government. Of course, I knew the trend of government policy, which appeared to suggest that even at the height of disarmament, certain types of weapon would still have to be developed. Ergo, firms connected with them could be expected to flourish. That wasn't a foolish piece of reasoning on my part, and I felt entitled to act upon it. I looked at various firms and backed my guess. It came off. With hindsight, I could wish it hadn't. Well, this firm was bought by Howard and Hazelhurst 3 months after I put my money in. Yes, I was out of office by then. I had no conceivable foreknowledge of the transaction. But I did very well out of it from the nature of the case.
Timing's unfortunate.
Apparently. The point is that Getliff went outside the rules. I kept strictly inside them.
It's a fine distinction for the general public to have to make.
It's all very well for you to sit on the fence. So I want this business stopped before it goes any further. Is it within our power?
It depends on my son's wife.
Up to a point.
Don't prevaricate. Do you deny that she could stop this abomination?
Well, only by ruining a paper which, for all its faults, expresses her political convictions.
That's the best news I've heard to date. Charles must bring her to heel. He ought to keep her busier himself.
I can't let you delude yourself.
I don't understand. She's devoted to him, isn't she?
I've no reason to believe the contrary.
Then she'll do what he tells her.
I can't answer for what he'll tell her.
You mean she wears the trousers?
I'm ashamed to say that that is the case.
I don't agree. Charles may not tell her what to do, but that's not because he's her slave. Quite the reverse.
Well, I'm sure that's all very deep. This is serious. These people may make it impossible for me to stay in public life. Well, then, be as considerate as you like. Now, tell Charles we would dream of interfering with his wife's activities as a general rule, but this is far too important to me and for the family for us to be over-delicate. He must assert himself.
You don't know what you're asking.
If the thing's possible, it's got to be done. I'm quite prepared to speak to Charles.
No, Philip. I must do it myself.
They're not going to drop it.
No, I thought not.
What do you want me to do?
Nothing that you can't do with a clear conscience. I mean it.
I know.
I better be on my rounds.
Right.
Oh, by the way, Mr. Ells invited us to dinner.
When?
Next Tuesday. There's a gathering of the clan to celebrate the birth of Catherine's youngest.
That's just the pretext.
Perhaps.
I don't want to go. He'll just attack me through you. You know he will.
It's very likely, but I'm afraid I still want you to go.
What good will it do?
Very little, I dare say, but he's made an approach and I can't refuse him.
Must I go, though?
Yes.
We've had a remarkable summer. Give yourself some more brandy, Francis.
Thank you, Mr. L. May I?
Yes, thank you. It's been the first summer since 1931 when there has been no danger of drought at my house in the country. It's been the first summer since then that I've not been compelled to make my guests ration the amount of water in their baths. 1929 was singularly difficult. That summer, on your first visit to my house in the country, I was compelled to allow you the maximum of 4 inches in your bath.
I remember it vividly.
Thank you. The time I issued those instructions was immediately followed by the appearance of Anne Simon after luncheon.
It wasn't a direct consequence, Mr. L.
No. I always presumed that she was invited through the ordinary channels.
You are rather apt to give the impression that no one has ever been properly invited.
But then you've never been able to trust your children to behave with reasonable decorum, have you?
And that is so. I think perhaps I ought to have been born in a different epoch.
I think perhaps I ought to have been too.
But you're better prepared to endure unpleasantness than I am.
I don't like the prospect of the future any more than you do.
I've never liked the prospect of any unpleasantness. But that's my temperament.
Don't you think our temperaments are very much alike? I may do things that you wouldn't have done, but we're much more alike than most fathers and sons. I wish you'd believe it. At bottom, we're very similar people. Father, don't you know that we are?
I hope so. If that is true, it makes it easier for me.
Get some water.
I'm so sorry.
I better get her home at once.
Is she ill?
Yes.
Is it desirable to move her?
I think she would rather be at home.
She's in no state to have her inclinations humoured. Were it not for previous circumstances, I believe that you would make her stay here.
I think I'd better stay.
Not fair. Not fair!
Lewis Elliot. Yes. Yes, of course. I'll come right over. Anne's got pneumonia.
If her temperature doesn't come down. I blame myself bitterly for not having spotted it sooner. Do what she asks, whatever it is.
Anne?
Lewis, thank you for coming.
Charles made me promise not to let you talk too much.
There's a chance I may die. No, I don't think I shall. There's one thing I must get settled. I mean, the showdown over the paper. I'm not going to back out now. If I get over this, there'll be plenty of time to talk to Charles after. If I don't, I want you to give him a message. He can do what he likes. Papers are in my steel filing cabinet. Under H. He's only got to send them to the DPP. If he wants to finish the paper. If I die, Charles wants to marry again. Someone who won't give him any trouble. Give him some children. No. Mr. L, no. All right. I know I've got a posh accent, comrades. Doesn't mean I don't share your hopes, fears, and...
How's it going?
Promising, promising. I do believe I found a poet who has a certain something, and no Eliot, mark you, T.S., that is to say, more the pound of the provinces. Still, some of his work does have its own voice. Now, what have you been doing? Writing, I trust.
A bit. Trying, anyway.
And now you want my verdict.
I'm not sure.
Well, you've brought it, haven't you?
Yes, but
Fair's fair.
the thing is, I mind about it rather.
Better the devil you know. Splendid.
This sleep may be a good sign.
The specialist is anything but sanguine.
Come in.
Who is she? She will pull through. As a matter of fact, I'll see her. It looks as though she'll pull through. I'm going up to her. I'm sorry to drag you here, but it's my partner's day off.
Wednesday.
What? Oh, yes. Drink?
It's a bit early for me, thanks.
Anne sent for you when it was on the cards that she might die.
That's right.
She gave you a message for me.
Yes.
She told me this morning that I could ask you about it. She'd rather you told me than tell me herself.
Oh.
It's about this wretched rag, I suppose. Well, I'd better hear it. You left it to me. In the circumstances, I can understand that. But you didn't die. And I'm still left with it? Oh. Well, given time, I can probably come to terms with that. But couldn't you have told me yourself, though? You're much the bravest person that I know. Did you really have to get Lewis to do it? You've been closer to me than any other human being ever has been or ever could be. I thought I knew you. I was astonished that you should get out of telling me this yourself. Hurt and astonished. I don't think I know you at all.
I can't cope anymore.
I think we're bound to ask you. Has Anne killed this scandal?
No.
The only certain way of killing it is to get the notes suppressed.
Right.
And it's in Anne's power to do that.
Right again.
She would do it if you told her to.
I have no intention of doing so.
You can't mean it.
Let's be clear. Politically, I'm on Anne's side. More than you are, I expect.
Yes, I'm less committed than either of you.
I'm also prepared to admit that the note has its uses.
The point is, it's something Anne believes in.
You've never forgiven Mr. L for his hostility to Anne. Ever since then, you've been ready to destroy this family.
You were ready to do that to marry Francis?
You wouldn't even ask your wife to put a stop to a piece of wickedness she should never have started.
Are you sure your motives are that pure? It'll be a nuisance for you to have the subject of your brother's sharp practice revived. You wouldn't want to go through all that again, would you? In fact, you'll go to any lengths to prevent it.
That's unforgivable.
There's no use going on. We must say this. If Anne doesn't stop this business, we shan't be able to meet her.
Obviously, we shan't create any embarrassment. If we meet socially, we'll put a decent face on it. But we shan't be able to meet her again in private.
You realize this must include me?
I was afraid you'd take it that way.
Well, I think you're being just. According to your lights. All I can say is this. From you two, I hoped for something more than justice. It's hard losing you.
I should be obliged if I could have a word with my daughter.
I've given her my answer.
You realize that if my brother is forced out of public office by your willful inaction, I shall have no alternative but to disinherit you entirely.
That's your decision, Father. I can't let it influence mine.
Why didn't you make him independent when he wanted to marry?
I should never have allowed you to make representation between myself and my son.
She did her best to keep me in your will.
Just!
I should never have spoken of money if I could have relied upon your affection.
Come.
My affection for you was greater than you were ever ready to admit. We're very much alike, Father. Didn't you even hear what I said to you the night Anne was taken ill?
There is only one thing you can say that I am prepared to hear.
That's impossible for me.
More impossible than destroying my family. More impossible than showing your utter ingratitude to me. More impossible than leaving me with nothing to live for in the last years of my life and condemning yourself to squalor now and after I am dead.
I'm afraid it is.
If you hadn't married your wife...
I'm responsible for everything that I've done.
I refuse to accept your assurance.
You know that it's true.
If she hadn't begun this outrage, if she had...
If she'd died, you mean? If she'd died? Well, you've never been more wrong. If she had died, I wouldn't have lifted a finger to save you.
I never expected to have my son needing to act against me. I never contemplated living without my son. You've counted the cost of this intention of yours. You've asked people what it's like to be penniless.
Yes.
And you're ready to put yourself in the shameful position of living on your wife's money.
I may even earn a little myself.
So if this calamity happens, you're requiring me to decide on my own actions.
Yes.
I don't know what's happening to this family. My generation wasn't a patch on my father's. And as for yours, there isn't one of you that'll make a couple of inches in the obituary columns. You were the only chance of rescuing them from mediocrity. Goodness knows I didn't do much. I wasn't the one to make much of my opportunities. But I didn't willfully throw them away.
Thank you. Is anything special the matter? What is it? What's the matter? Is it to do with me? What then?
It's my writing.
Yes?
I didn't show it to you because it wasn't for you. It was...
Never mind.
I've been a fool. I've let Horace know.
Does that matter?
It's worse than that. I've let him get it out of me.
It's not the end of the world.
I'm so afraid of what he'll do.
What can he do?
What he'll say then. What he'll say.
I don't doubt you'll have to harden yourself against a bit of malice, but that's par for the course with RSR, isn't it?
I'm afraid.
I wouldn't worry about it.
So afraid.
You let them go ahead.
Isn't that what you would have done?
I don't know.
No. Well, it's done now.
Get me out of it. I don't care how, as long as I don't have to see him again. You might as well try and get my money back if you can.
Right.
What's this?
He's been telling people I only backed him so as to get my own manuscript published.
You shouldn't have burned it.
I should never have embarked on it.
I should never have let you get involved with a bloody man.
I'm 3 white and 31.
Sheila.
Not so.
A letter from the Prime Minister is on its way.
Well, what does that mean?
It may mean the sack. Or it may mean another job in the present reshuffle.
They've given Horton a leg up, Percy.
Yes. This brouhaha doesn't seem to have done him any harm.
All the more reason to steer clear of Getcliffe, don't you agree?
I would have thought so.
Frankly, I'd like to warn him off it altogether. Let it die.
This has just come from number 10, Minister.
Well, there's the key.
Surely you have it, sir.
Never, man. I've never had it. I remember returning it to the last time a box arrived.
I remember you kept it, sir. You put it on your keyring, sir.
I tell you, I've never had the key in my possession for a single moment. Look, man.
It's that one, sir.
Very well. It's the sack. Done civilly enough.
I made it clear to you what I should do if this calamity occurred.
Yes?
I owe you the courtesy of telling you that I have instructed the family solicitor accordingly.
Thank you for telling me.
I shall make no further demands on your time.
May I ask you something?
Huh?
This all started when Catherine and I wanted to marry people you considered to be unsuitable, didn't it?
Yes, I suppose it did.
It's too late to make any difference, but I should like to understand. Why were you so gentle with her then? And why are you now being so fantastically harsh with me?
You were always my favorite child.
Yes. Yes, I see.
I once did something more unforgivable than you've done or could ever do.
But did it seem you were bound to make a choice? That whatever you did, you had to hurt someone?
I had no justification at all. I was getting rid of a rival. A rival who might have made Sheila happy.
This just seemed to be tied up with everything in my life. Until it happened, I didn't know what I should have to live with. In myself, I mean.
Mischief? Mischief? It would help me, sir, if you could give me an idea of the sort of mischief I'm supposed to be guilty of, just as a rough guy.
You've been slandering her from the very beginning.
And you a lawyer, sir?
It was your saying that she'd only backed you as a way of getting into print that really sickened her.
Do you really think I'd be that stupid? Why should I blackguard someone who was supporting me and do it so very foolishly? Good Heavens, for the sum she lent me, she could have had her book privately printed 5 times over. Now, I'm sorry, sir, but I hate to say it, I'm afraid you've let poor Sheila's state infect you. I suppose it is the beginning of schizophrenia.
I'm not here to discuss my wife.
As to her book, it has real merit, I assure you. Mind you, I don't think she'll ever become a professional author, but she does have it in her to say original things, perhaps because she is a little different from the rest of us.
All I want to hear from you is how you propose to pay her the money back.
I'm sorry it's come to that. Do you think if I would have a word with her...
This is final.
Of course. Why, I knew you were going to say that the very moment you came in.
You've done her harm.
Harm? She suffered harm through her association with me. What kind of harm? Oh. Well, perhaps this is neither the time nor the place to discuss the troubles of poor Sheila. You're here to get her money back, aren't you? Always recognize the inevitable. I'm a great believer in that.
I've settled with Robinson.
I don't want to hear.
He'll pay you back by 3 equal quarterly installments.
I don't want to hear anything about it at all.
Well, I do. You went into this with your eyes wide open.
That's not the point.
You knew RSR's reputation, didn't you?
Yes.
Could have warned you about him till I was blue in the face, and it wouldn't have made the slightest difference, would it?
Nope.
You expected ingratitude. You expected the rumours he put about.
As a backer, yes.
And why do we have to have this tragedy queen performance now?
Don't understand.
No, by God, I don't. You should have seen this coming a mile off.
I did. I also saw it as a chance of proving something.
To whom?
Myself.
What?
You spend your life rushing about saving people from themselves.
Or not, as the case may be.
I decided to try and do the same.
You picked a lamer dog than you thought, that's all.
Well, I'm not as seduced by success as you.
Yes, all right, but I don't see why I had to take a betrayal by a man like Robinson so hard.
Well, he dared me to reveal myself. Whatever his faults, I thought that he meant that for me, that might be a way through. I truly tried. I wrote down things that I've never even admitted to myself before. So when... Don't you see? When he said that I was simply paying to see myself in print... There's nowhere else I can turn to now.
I was not saying it wasn't a rotten experience for you.
It was much more than that. It was the end of hope. Of hoping that I just might reach, really reach, even one other person ever.
Sheila.
You think that's just words? Well, it isn't. It isn't. And the truly terrible thing is, as always, I brought it upon myself. That's what I can't bear.
Darling.
No. No.
You must believe me when I tell you that I have found it impossible to carry the heavy burden of responsibility and to discharge my duties as king as I would wish to do, without the help and support of the woman I love.